Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Business Immigration Benchmark. I'm your host, Laura Blaneres. I'm just coming back off of a week of spring break, traveling with my family, so feels good to be back. Had a great time out. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently here. We're going to just have a conversation with my producer, Finn, on our 5 hot issues for Q1 2024. Let us know how you like this new format. It's a little bit more conversational, a little bit more off the cuff. If you think we've missed any hot topics or issues or challenges for Q1 2024, please let me know. Shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. Again, I'm a LinkedIn creature these days. So please share any feedback related to this episode or questions you'd like to see on future benchmarking surveys or anything. I've received some really great feedback from listeners, so keep that coming. So Finn, let's jump right in. What's your first question for key takeaways in Q1?
All right, Laura. So we've heard a lot of chatter on cost containment throughout 2023 last year, but gas was sort of thrown on that flame, right, in Q1 of this past year with multiple announcements from USCIS on fee increases with premium processing, finalized fee increases that were announced last year, a lot of which went into effect either before April 1st or on April 1st. And then we've seen cost containment, cited as a major pain point by lots of immigration and global mobility professionals in our last few benchmarking surveys that WR has run. So it's a real issue, not just a sort of detached topic of conversation at events. Clearly, it's something that is a day-to-day pain point for HR, immigration, and global mobility professionals. How do you see, these teams, immigration and global mobility teams, handling cost containment now? And what do you project for the rest of the year on how those teams are going to approach it?
Yeah, I haven't seen any clients change their policies, at least yet. I haven't seen them reduce benefits or supporting coverage yet. They're certainly asking about what other folks are doing. So that's their sort of point of conversation, because this is, I think, the defining issue of 2024 and likely beyond. So my clients are coming to me first and foremost for forecasts. So we forecasted 2024. We had to reforecast based on the premium processing fee increase, and then we reforecasted based on all of the fee increases that are effective April 1st. So we've done a lot of forecasting, and that's the tone of the conversation. There's certainly a lot of anxiety, both from foreign nationals, but now certainly from HR, about how to make their programs continue to run smoothly in light of being charged with cost containment. So right now we're really at the conversation stage, the forecasting, the benchmarking stage, if I dare say that, which of course we're continuing to do here on the Business Immigration Benchmark. So stay tuned for more insights there. But yeah, clients are just interested in understanding what other companies are doing, but I haven't seen any companies reduce benefits, like reduce premium processing for extensions yet. Companies that were already doing it are continuing to do it, but are considering moving off of premium processing for extensions, or companies that file for dependent extensions, EADs, if they qualify, are continuing to do so, but are interested to understand what other programs look like when they don't sponsor, and understanding what a rollout of changing that policy would look like. So right now it's just at the conversation stage. Clients are receiving negative feedback if the sponsorship goes to the manager's cost center. So we're seeing some of our HR global mobility professionals receiving some real heat from managers when they're given the bill. So I think from those conversations, I'm understanding that HR global mobility needs more support for educating the managers, for putting together the schedule sheets to break down just the H-1B transfer cost for managers. So when the manager is considering hiring an H-1B transfer candidate, the HR global mobility professional recruiting is given, a real simple snapshot of what the fees will look like, when those fees will hit, so that the manager is well aware of fees that are going to be incurred when hiring the H-1B candidate. And like I said, clients are very curious about what other companies are doing to deal with cost containment, how they're handling, if they're changing policies, those types of things. So we're going to continue to benchmark those types of questions. If you all have questions that you want covered on the Business Immigration Benchmark, here's my call to action. Send me a DM on LinkedIn of what those benchmarks you want to see included on future benchmarking surveys.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that plug. Laura, we are planning on running a survey in June to HR immigration and global mobility professionals, asking them how the USCIS fee increases have impacted, maybe their policies or their strategies going through the rest of 2024. So we're hoping to have some good data from, dozens, if not 100 or more, HR immigration and global mobility professionals that we'll collect in June. And then we'll share that data through the podcast and other channels, obviously, in July as well. And hopefully that helps folks with their strategic decision making.
Yeah, and I think something like this, when there's, these fee increases, there's not going to be an immediate impact. Like we're going to see it probably in a year, and, we'll notice whether companies are lowering sponsorship opportunities. Maybe they're not going to sponsor as many H-1B candidates as they had in the past because of fees. But that's not something that's going to show up in our data on, day one of these fee increases happening. And a lot of the feedback we're getting from clients are just, like, what are other people doing, how to react, but no one's making any decisions within this month or next month. I expect these types of policy changes or hiring volumes, we'll be able to see that in about a year. Like, I don't think there's going to be any immediate takeaways from this.
Yeah, that's a great point. One follow-up on this topic. I know you work with, clients large and small. You work with big, sort of sophisticated, complex global programs. You also work with HR generalists where global mobility and immigration is just a part of their overall function. And you mentioned that, internal comms is a bit of a pain point when it comes to cost containment in 2024. Is there a difference at all in the clients that you've worked with or the folks that you've talked to who maybe aren't clients but are in similar positions at their company when it comes to the challenges they're facing, communicating with their CHROs, with their councils, whoever their higher ups are, on the path forward for cost containment? Or are the challenges pretty consistent regardless of the size and sophistication of the program?
Well, I hadn't thought about that, but they are different. So with my smaller companies, I think information is much more isolated, and, companies that are building and growing are doing a lot of things all at once, and their HR, their leadership are wearing many hats all at once. And so the education piece there is a particular challenge because they're not always sure within their organization who's the right stakeholder to talk to, because rules are changing all the time and it's really flexible. So sometimes, my day-to-day contact think they have the right person to notify about, here's, what it costs, here's our forecast, but that person changes. And so they're not informing the right people. So that's a frustration for those types of companies, is just getting and disseminating the forecast, the information, the changes, only to be met with a new leader who might not be aware of what immigration is generally, how their company is sponsoring people, how many. So it's definitely like always sort of chasing the tail of communication. So we try to develop just really standardized communications that are HR, global mobility, day-to-day contact, which again, they wear different hats within their organization too, turns over to leadership as leadership sort of changes and molds to where the company's going. And just with explosive growth, that's a problem, but it's a good problem to have. So that's unique for those types of companies. The larger, more sophisticated companies will have established leadership, approval, policy programs. For those, they're the ones that are least likely to sort of pivot and change their policies on the stroke of a change. Like, they're going to consider it. There's going to be multiple stakeholders that need to be in the meeting. So the challenge there is just getting time on those calendars to brief them. So what we do is, prepare the HR mobility contact to make sure that they look really good in maybe that intro meeting. And then they bring us in to sort of present deeper if, the leadership needs it. But their programs are just more adept to sort of taking in information, talking about the policy, and that they won't roll out changes immediately. We'll see that in, like I said, probably in, next year, as is, now is the time where employers are looking at revising their handbooks anyway, for 2025. So this is where they're like thinking about things and will roll out any changes should there be any need for changes in 2025. So that's the kind of conversations we're starting now of like, if you're thinking about reducing benefits like premium processing, here's how you would communicate it. Here's the timeline. Here's the strategy. And then we'll start seeing those rolled out in 2025. So a little bit more orderly in the bigger companies. The downside there is that when they need to make reactive changes, it's harder to do that, where the smaller startup companies are in a position to react more flexibly, more nimbly.
Yeah, it's a really interesting distinction there. Okay, next one. So after much anticipation, USCIS made quite a few, last minute changes to the H-1B lottery process this year. And again, there's a lot of chatter happening now in the industry on how this new process was rolled out in February and March. And we're going to do, again, just another plug on the benchmarking side. We're going to do a survey on this particular topic and sort of the experience that HR and global mobility teams had with the new system actually this month in April. So we're hoping to roll out some data and some feedback from folks in May. But Laura, what were your experiences with your clients with the new system and process? And what did you hear from your colleagues and peers in the space on what their biggest, what the biggest pros and cons of the new H-1B lottery system was this year, I guess, preliminarily?
Yeah, so preliminarily, and I'll touch back on this in just a minute. I mean, I think a lot of the process that was bumpy, and I'll sort of summarize, I think it was bumpy, was really the burden was held by the practitioners, by attorneys. I mean, from lots of 404 errors to like hovering over registrations that would be automatically deleted by just hovering over it. The system was inaccessible for so long that USCIS actually extended the registration period. So originally, if you all recall, the H-1B registration period was scheduled to close noon Eastern on March 22nd, and that was actually extended through noon Eastern on March 25th because the platform just wasn't available for many hours, many days. Thankfully, USCIS was accountable for that and did offer some time extension. So I think that summarizes just like the platform and the system just wasn't able to handle all the traffic. But I think the burden was really on attorneys that were completing the registrations. I'm not sure that my clients had the bumpy technical glitch experience that we all did, and our paralegals certainly were frustrated with. I did receive feedback from clients being like, this is like technology from like the 1980s. And it was like, yeah, that's a pretty good summary. Like it's, USCIS thinks it's up to date and it's just not on par with the innovative things we're seeing our clients do, quite frankly. But the other thing is, despite having completed an attorney profile, we still saw a lot of manual updates. We use a bot to complete registration. So we're trying to be efficient with our time and the data that we already have in our system. So our system can talk directly into USCIS. I know many attorneys have this feature, but even having that feature, there is still a lot of manual entry. So it's bumpy, to say the least. USCIS is still finding a way to slow the process down with its just glitchy system. The other thing is that selection notifications were also frustrating. So we saw selection notifications go out last week, but in many instances, the client portal, when I log in, I'm able to see the clients that I represent and see like a snapshot summary of updates in each client. But those weren't accurately showing when the registration was selected. So you had to like click in individually to the clients to see if they were selected because it wasn't showing accurately. So there's a lot of, again, manual even review after selections were reported. So even though USCIS moves this platform, the registration, to online, in theory, this should be very automatic, very accessible. It turned out to be inaccessible, bumpy, glitchy, and rather manual in summary. One thing that's yet to be seen is where the selection of a foreign national, this beneficiary-centric system, hasn't played out yet. So we don't know yet if some of these registrants or these foreign nationals have been selected for multiple companies. And so that's yet to play out because multiple companies can still file an H-1B petition on behalf of the same employee or foreign national. So we'll have to circle back on that. I don't know that that will play out until October 1st, until H-1B caps are effective for the fiscal year, which turns out to be October 1st. So I think, as far as I'm describing the online registration system this year has really just been the process, the protocol, the system. I think we'll find out in October how the actual beneficiary-centric system plays out for employers and if we see a lot of movement within these foreign nationals of maybe having multiple companies submit H-1B, not only registrations, but petitions on their behalf. So we'll certainly report out and talk about what that looks like for employers and how they're handling it.
All right, another big update that was announced by USCIS in Q1, after years and years of anticipation, is an online filing system. In our February benchmarking survey, we saw that 35% of HR immigration and global mobility professionals said their company intends to continue submitting paper filings until they see evidence of efficacy with the new online system. So maybe not the result USCIS wants, right off the bat, but I think we understand it from the global mobility team perspective. Just 26% said they'll make an immediate shift to all online filing, and then 17% said they'll migrate some of their filings to the online system, but continue to maintain the ability to do paper filings. So Laura, with that, what do you make of that sort of data that we collected back in February? And with the little information that we have about how well the new online filing system will work, what do you anticipate the trends will be with global mobility programs throughout the rest of the year in terms of interfacing with this new online system?
Well, one thing, I love going on record predicting the future. So thanks for that question, Finn. I think the H-1B registration process really illustrated how much more USCIS needs to invest in the online system. Like I said, it was glitchy, it was bumpy, it wasn't handling all the traffic. Now, of course, with online filing, you're not going to have the same volume trafficking across the platform all at the same time within the same 2-week period. So I'll give them that. But it's all to say that, I just summarized the H-1B online registration as bumpy and glitchy. So I think that's what we can expect the online filing system to look like in the first few months. Functionality was poor. The user experience was poor. If we had any errors on the H-1B cap registrations, you couldn't go back and amend it. You had to delete it and start over. And that doesn't bode well for form filing, because when you send it to the client might catch something that needs to be updated. And then if the attorney has to go back with the paralegal legal team to delete and then complete new forms, that's super inefficient. People are not going to want to adopt that. Despite the perceived benefits of online filing, that's going to really be a huge hurdle for people to get over. So my prediction depends on two things. I think whether there's enough early adopters to the online filing to give feedback to USCIS. And I think there will be. I think there's enough buy-in to move into online filing. I'm one of them. I think clients can benefit. I think our practices can benefit for this. So I'm all for the use of this, but I think it's going to be pretty manual at first. And then with that feedback, the second thing this system is going to depend on is how engaged USCIS is in investing in updating based on the feedback. So is USCIS engaged? Is it resourced? And again, in an election year, I think those things can be really tricky. So I think that's all to say that if I'm predicting when online filing gets systematically updated, I think it's going to be about a year. And I think it's going to be after an election where people are sort of seeing how things play out and how ultimately USCIS is resourced.
Yeah, and I guess a quick follow-up on that as well. I don't think we had a large enough sample size in the February survey, provided the data that I just cited there, to sort of say this authoritatively. But I wonder if anecdotally you heard from your clients or from your other peers in the space and in the industry, whether or not the larger programs are more hesitant to fold online filing into their process and their strategy versus smaller, more nimble programs that have less cases and maybe there's less of a risk if online filing has some hiccups. Is that a conversation that you've been hearing, or is that still too early to tell?
I think it's still too early to tell. And I think it really depends on the experience and sophistication of the day-to-day contact, whether they're willing to, process things online, because the day-to-day contact, the signatory may be the same, may not be the same. And it's really kind of pending the signatory, which again may not be the day-to-day HR mobility contact that's, processing these things in bulk, whether that person's willing and able to go online and manage this process. So I think that's going to be different. I don't know that that's going to cut straight across large companies, small companies. I think it's going to cut across, is that signatory resource willing and able and frankly wanting to do this immediately. So I think it depends on the sophistication of that person and their tolerance to move into a new process.
I think that'd be a cool thing to hear from our listeners, if there's any out there.
Yeah.
If there are any tech forward listeners who are gung ho about online filing and are ready to go all in on it, I share your feedback with Laura, on LinkedIn. We'd love to chat with you and discuss sort of your thoughts, pros and cons you see on the online filing system in the podcast in a future episode, maybe.
Totally. Good call out.
Cool. All right. Here's a topic that has had a ton of buzz this year. national interest waivers, or NIWs for short. I won't even do too much setup here because I know you have some opinions on the conversation happening around NIWs right now. Maybe not necessarily NIWs themselves. So the floor is yours. What's your take on this sort of buzz?
Geez, what a setup. I'm seeing a ton of big firms with splashy headlines selling NIW as the antidote to stalled perm processing. And I think that's overwhelming. And I'm not sure that that's the nuance that NIW needs. For someone who's had practice at big firms, I'll be honest, like I did not have much experience with NIW till I came to WR and was mentored by people that have been filing NIWs for a real long time and have really mastered it, like Cliff Rosenthal, Jasune Aguirre-Gaimas, and Nate Groh. So, without having talked with those people that have been in the trenches for NIW for years now, I had to learn what NIW was, how it's being adjudicated. The Biden administration did publish a policy in the last year that did open up opportunities for NIW, making it much more flexible, giving, frankly, USCIS and practitioners better insight into how NIW would be adjudicated. And it really opened the doors. We are in the golden age of NIW. So I don't want to say NIW is not an option for people. It certainly is. And it's opened it up for a lot more because there's more clarity in who qualifies and why and what's considered vital sectors for work in the national interest. So I think these are all great things. I'm a big proponent. I'm loving where the Biden administration took this policy and how it's being played out. I just, kind of hesitant in how NIW is being sold that like, you get an NIW, you get an NIW. Like I don't think that's fair. And I think it gives people a false hope because not everyone is going to qualify. Not every company is working in the vital sectors that the Biden administration outlined. So I just want the conversation to be more nuanced when we're giving legal advice here. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just commenting on the practicality of NIW as the solution to perm stalled processing. I wish I had a golden ticket to give you all for perm processing times. I just don't want to sell NIW as that, knowing that it takes great writers, a great legal team, and nuanced strategy to get approvals. So that's kind of my hot take on that.
I think it's a great point, and I think it's difficult for global mobility professionals, HR immigration professionals, to cut through a lot of the noise on topics like this, like you mentioned. So we can plug like you mentioned his name, our colleague Nate Groh. If you're looking for sober analysis and sort of insight on what the NIW is and whether or not your employees may or may not qualify for them, and it's something you want to include in your program, follow him on LinkedIn. We'll put his LinkedIn profile in the show notes so you can do so.
Yeah, I think he's leading the conversation in a nuanced way. He's my go-to when I'm kind of, looking to understand matter of Danzar. Like, it's still a 3-pronged test. This Biden administration memo didn't just allow people just to file, right? You still have to have legal strategy. And, he's really developed a good system with his team to, produce good results again and give you, sober analysis, the right take on the strategy to use.
So no pun intended here, but an evergreen topic that I've always seen as having a lot of interest from the global mobility community is benchmarking green card sponsorship policies. I know you've talked a lot about this in your appearances on Chatting with Charlie, but in your view, what trends are impacting how global mobility teams are approaching green card sponsorship strategies this year in 2024?
So this one I have seen some clients move on, and again, not mid-year, but at the beginning of the year. I definitely saw that more HR global mobility teams are moving to review tenure requirements. So in the past, specifically during the COVID era, we saw companies with 0 tenure requirements for pursuing green card sponsorship. We're definitely seeing companies that have moved into 90 days, 6 months for holding a tenure requirement before initiating the green card sponsorship policy. And I think that just reflects hiring trends, that reflects where companies are going with retaining talent, that it's sort of shifted into more of an employer market, especially given all these layoffs. I also see a lot of clients, companies talking about clawback agreements, which I just didn't see this as central of an issue. Now, a company cannot pass or claw back any part of the perm process, or at least I don't recommend my clients pursue clawback for the perm process because regulatorily speaking, the company needs to pay for that labor market test if that's what you're pursuing for the foreign national. But the clawback agreement does state they can claw back, any fees paid for the I-140 or if the company pays for adjustment of status. I think the clawback, I'm a little mixed on this. Some clients feel really strongly that they want to have, the 10-year requirement, performance review, and a clawback. I think the clawback is good for serving as a vehicle for a conversation with the employee, saying like, this is what we're investing in you, confirming the benefits that the foreign national is receiving, that the company is giving as part of the sponsorship policy. I think that's positive. I've never seen a client pursue a clawback agreement. So, how much are they worth? I think it's the conversation that you're having with the employee. But yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of companies ask for template agreements. If you need one, hit me up. But, just sort of having the conversation with them and, providing how it matches their company culture, those types of things. But yeah, as far as, the company enforcing them, I just have not seen companies enforce them. So again, if you're out there and you enforce these, like I'm so curious to know how that all works because I've just never seen it in my practice. So come on and share your feedback and experience doing that. But certainly this has been a topic I see clients just more interested in. And then I'm getting more folks, more companies interested in pursuing employee requests for EB1, specifically the multinational manager route. So these are foreign national employees, often Indian foreign nationals who have a priority date of 2017 or something like that, which is way out of the money for getting that green card or filing the adjustment of status. And they're in a manager role because they've been performing for the company for so long in the US, and they're interested in the EB1 route, so being placed abroad and then coming back in. So I've had a number of companies ask about that, like how other companies are handling that. So I think more companies are open and interested in entertaining these types of requests should the business operations fit that request. Like if there's a business case, if the company can provide that kind of support. Some organizations just aren't structured in a way to flip a manager outside the US and flip them back in. That I say that kind of flippantly. It is quite difficult to do. There's a lot of pieces and HR systems that need to be in place to be able to do that. But companies and HR and global mobility are getting the question and are entertaining it more seriously than I've ever seen before. And then I think overall companies are more interested in supporting multiple pathways for green card. So not only exploring whether that manager can move abroad for pursuing manager duties at the affiliate abroad and coming back in for that EB1, but also NIWs or EB1 extraordinary ability or outstanding researcher. So companies are sort of more in tune with providing a faster pathway, even if that means multiple pathways. That summarizes the Q1 2024 trends that I'm seeing. If I've missed any, please let me know. Give me some feedback, shoot me a DM. And again, I think the cost containment is going to be the central theme for 2024. So we're going to come back to this and look at it from different takes, from different lights as it continues to bubble up throughout the year. Bit of housekeeping. Episodes are released every Monday. So please follow us on Spotify or subscribe to WR Immigration on YouTube. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn creature these days. If you have any feedback, if I've missed any of the hot trends in Q1 2024 for the global immigration mobility space, you can also send feedback, questions, or suggestions on future topics to Finn. He is the producer of the show. His email is in the show notes. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.